You want to bake a cake, you go on YouTube to find a tutorial. You choose the video with the most views. Why? Why do we attribute success to our own skills and ascribe failure to other factors? Why do we do what we do? You probably think that you are in full control of your thoughts and actions. But do you know about the numerous biases, fallacies, and mind traps that are hardwired into your brain that influence your day to day thinking? In this video, we talk about 11 cognitive biases that we all possess, knowingly or not, that influence the decisions we make. This video is mainly inspired by the works of Swiss author and entrepreneur Rolf de Belli and his book The Art of Thinking Clearly. Number 1. Social proof. You want to buy a shirt online, you go and check its reviews. If they are positive, you buy the shirt. Why? Social proof. You are on your way to the grocery store. You see a group of people watching the sky. You glance up too. Why? Social proof. Social proof is the idea that individuals tend to feel they are behaving correctly when they act like others. For example, if someone isn't sure of how to act in a social situation, they take guidance from the people around them and copy their behavior. And more the number of people displaying a certain behavior, the more it is deemed to be acceptable. That is, of course, silly. But why do we do this? Well, because it is deeply rooted in our brains. In the past, if all the people of your group ran away, you'd run away too, whether or not you saw a danger. Because it is, of course, better to save yourself from something that you might have missed than to wonder if there is any danger in the first place at all. This behavior is not necessarily bad. For example, if a lot of your friends recommend you a particular product, it might actually be good. It's just the social proof might influence us to copy others, even if we know the truth. Knowing this behavior is extensively leveraged in marketing, which is why brands work so hard for reviews and influencer marketing. So be skeptical when a company claims their product is the best just because it is popular. Is a product better simply because it sells the most units, or are there some omitted variables here? And remember, if 50 million people say something foolish, it is still foolish. Number 2. Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is a cognitive bias that refers to the tendency of people to seek out, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms their pre existing beliefs or hypotheses. In other words, we tend to filter out any new information that contradicts our existing beliefs. Matters relating to money are inherently emotional, and the confirmation bias is very evident during investing. Many times, people selectively remember the positive information about a particular stock they hold, while ignoring all the negative information or warnings from financial experts. Even if the indicators show clear signs of deterioration, they tend to block those out and consider only the positive signs because they do not want to believe that their beliefs can be wrong. Facts don't cease to exist because they are ignored, so ignoring them can cause much harm. Overall, confirmation bias can lead to a distorted point of view and prevent people from considering alternative viewpoints or evidence that challenges their beliefs. And the internet enhances this tendency. A lot of sites and apps tailor their content to personal interest and browsing history, causing new and divergent opinions to vanish from our feeds altogether. We inevitably land in communities of like minded people, further reinforcing our beliefs and resulting in echo chambers. So, what can we do to not get stuck with our existing beliefs? We need to realize this tendency of ours and keep an open mind. Consciously be on the lookout for disconfirming evidence and try to find faults with your existing theories. Axing beliefs that feel like old friends is hard work, but imperative. Number 3. Simple logic. Let's play a game. I'll give you 3 questions and you have to work out their answers. So keep a pen handy. The first question is: in a departmental store, a pen and a pencil cost $1.10. If the pen costs $1 more, how much is the pencil? Second question: in a textile factory, 5 machines take exactly 5 minutes to make 5 shirts. How many minutes will it take 100 machines to make 100 shirts? And the third question: a pond has water lilies growing in it. The flowers multiply quickly, each day doubling the area they take up. If it takes 48 days for the pond to be completely covered with water lilies, how many days will it take to be half covered? Think about it for a few minutes and come up with an answer in your head or on a paper. For each of these questions, there is an intuitive answer and a right one. The quick intuitive answers come to mind first: 10 cents, 100 minutes, and 24 days. But these are all wrong. The solutions are 5 cents, 5 minutes, and 47 days. How many did you answer correctly? This leads us to the conclusion that the more intuitively people make decisions, the less rationally they query beliefs. Thinking is more exhausting than sensing, because rational thought requires more willpower than simply giving in to intuition. In other words, intuitive people are less likely to scrutinize. Therefore, we should always double check whether the decision we are making is based on intuition or rationality. Number 4. Default effect. Why do you go with the status quo? Default setting bias is a cognitive bias that refers to the tendency of people to accept the default option presented to them rather than actively considering alternative choices. This bias is often observed in situations where a default option is pre selected for people and they are required to take an active step to change it. Default setting bias can be explained using the principle of least effort, where people tend to choose the option that requires the least amount of cognitive resources. This bias can also be linked to other cognitive biases, such as status quo bias, where people have a preference for the current state of affairs and are reluctant to change it. Let's see an example from our own lives. How many of us have used the powerful Microsoft Word program? Most of us, I would guess. But how many of us have actually changed the settings of the application or even knew that they could be changed? Not many of us. In fact, the research team at Microsoft investigated just this. More than 95% had kept the settings in the exact configuration that the program was installed in. Both the default effect and the status quo bias reveal that we have a strong tendency to cling to the way the things are, even if this puts us at a disadvantage. By changing the default setting, you can change human behavior. Number 5. Sunk cost fallacy. Have you ever sat through a film in the hall even though it is excruciatingly boring? Yes? Why? Because you paid for it, right? And if you leave it halfway, you have just wasted your money, right? This is the sunk cost fallacy at work. You have spent your money regardless of whether you stay or leave, so this factor should not play a role in your decision. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency of people to continue investing in a project or an activity even when the costs outweigh the potential benefits. This bias is driven by the belief that because they have already invested time, effort, or money in a particular activity, they should continue to invest to avoid losing what they have already invested. Sunk cost is an economic concept which refers to the costs that have already been incurred and cannot be recovered. Because sunk costs are irreversible, they should not influence decisions about future actions. For example, many people continue to stay in a toxic or unhealthy relationship because they have already invested significant time and effort into it, even though it may not be beneficial for them in the long run. Of course, there may be compelling reasons to continue investing in something in order to complete it. However, avoid doing so for the wrong reasons, such as justifying unrecoverable investments. Rational decision making requires you to forget about the cost incurred to date. No matter how much you have already invested, only your assessment of the future costs and benefits count. Number 6. Gambler's Fallacy. In the summer of 1913, something incredible happened in Monte Carlo. Crowds gathered around a roulette table and could not believe their eyes. The ball had landed on black 20 times in a row. Many people took advantage of this opportunity and immediately put all their money on red. But the ball continued to come on black. Even more people flocked to the table to bet on red. It had to change eventually, but it was black yet again, and again, and again. It was not until the 27th spin that the ball eventually landed on red. By that time, the players had bet millions on the table. In a few spins of the wheel, they were bankrupt. This is the gambler's fallacy. The truth is, probability has no memory in the case of a roulette table or that of an unbiased coin. With independent events, there is no harmonizing factor at work. A ball cannot remember how many times it had landed on black. The gambler's fallacy is a common cognitive bias that leads people to believe that previous events can influence the outcome of future events in situations where the outcome is determined by chance. However, purely independent events exist only in the casino, the lottery, and theory. In real life, in the financial markets, and in business, with the weather and your health, events are often interrelated. What has happened has an influence on what will happen. But in the case of independent events, there simply is no balancing force at play, no matter how much we would like to believe there is. Number 7. Exponential growth. There was once a wise courtier who presented the king with a chessboard. Moved by the gift, the king said to him, "Tell me, how can I thank you?" The courtier replied, "I want nothing more than for you to cover the chessboard with rice. putting one grain of rice in the first square, and then on every subsequent square, twice the previous number of grains. The king was astonished. It is an honor to you, dear courtier, that you present such a modest request. But how much rice is that? The king guessed about a sack, only when his servants began the task. Placing a grain on the first square, 2 grains of rice on the second square, 4 grains of rice on the third, and so on, did he realize that he would need more rice than was growing on earth. Linear growth we understand intuitively. However, we have no sense of exponential or percentage growth. Why is this? Because we didn't need it before. Our ancestors' experiences were mostly of the linear variety. Whoever hunted 2 mammoths instead of one could eat for twice as long. In the Stone Age, people rarely came across exponential growth. Today, things are different. For example, you know that a certain investment you made has a growth rate of 9%. But what does that mean? Let's try to make sense of it by understanding the rule of 72. It is a simple mathematical formula that is used to estimate the amount of time it will take for an investment to double in value. You simply take the number 72 and divide it by the annual growth rate. So, with an annual growth rate of 9%, it would take approximately 8 years for the investment to double in value, since 72 divided by 9 equals 8. Now, take another example of the inflation rate being 8%. In how many years will 1 unit of money, say 1 rupee or $1, be worth half of what it is today? The concept of exponential growth can be challenging to understand intuitively because it involves large and rapid changes that are not commonly experienced in our daily lives and may require us to think beyond our usual short term perspective. So, when it comes to growth rates, do not trust your intuition. You don't have any. Accept it. What really helps is a calculator, or with low growth rates, the magic number of 72. Number 8. Self serving bias. You definitely know this bias from high school. If you got an A in a test, you were solely responsible. The top grade reflected your intelligence, hard work, and skill. And if you flunked, the test was clearly unfair. Self serving bias is a cognitive bias that refers to people's tendency to take credit for their success but blame external factors for their failures. In other words, people tend to attribute positive outcomes to their own abilities and efforts while attributing negative outcomes to external factors such as bad luck or other people's actions. So, why do we attribute success to our own skills and ascribe failure to other factors? There are many theories. The simple explanation is probably this: it feels good. Plus, it doesn't cause any major harm. If it did, evolution would have eliminated it over the past 100,000 years. But beware, in a modern world with many hidden risks, the self serving bias can quickly lead to catastrophe. Richard Fuld, the self titled master of the universe, might well endorse this. He was the mighty CEO of the investment bank Lehman Brothers until it went bankrupt in 2008. Self serving bias can be problematic because it can lead to overconfidence and a lack of accountability. To overcome self serving bias, it is important to recognize our own biases and take steps to hold ourselves accountable for our actions and outcomes. This may involve seeking out feedback from others, being open to constructive criticism, and acknowledging the role that external factors may play in our successes and failures. Number 9. Procrastination. Why New Year's resolutions don't work. We know this one all too well. We all have that one task, you know which one, just waiting somewhere while we hope it finishes itself. Procrastination is the tendency to delay unpleasant but important tasks. The arduous trek to the gym, switching to a cheaper insurance policy, writing thank you letters. Even New Year's resolutions won't help you here. Procrastination is idiotic because no project completes itself. We know that these tasks are beneficial, so why do we keep pushing them onto the back burner? Because of the time lapse between sowing and reaping. And to bridge it, a high degree of mental energy is required. The most effective trick, however, is to set deadlines. Psychologist Dan Ariely found that dates stipulated by external authorities, for example, a teacher or the IRS, work best. Self imposed deadlines will work only if the task is broken down step by step, with each part assigned its own due date. For this reason, nebulous New Year's resolutions are doomed to fail. So get over yourself. Procrastination is irrational but human. To fight it, use a combined approach. One way is to break tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces, which can make them feel less daunting. Another strategy is to set specific goals and deadlines for completing tasks and to hold oneself accountable for meeting those goals. It can also be helpful to identify and address any underlying fears or negative beliefs that may be contributing to procrastination. Number 10. Envy. Here is a Russian tale. A farmer finds a magic lamp. He rubs it, and out of thin air appears a genie who promises to grant him one wish. The farmer thinks about it for a little while. Finally, he says, "My neighbor has a cow and I have none. I hope that his drops dead." As absurd as it sounds, you can probably identify with the farmer. Admitted, a similar thought must have occurred to you at some point in your life. Billionaire investor Charlie Munger said, "The world is not driven by greed, it's driven by envy." Envy can arise when someone feels that they are lacking in something that someone else possesses, and they feel that the other person's success or possessions are somehow unfair or undeserved. How do you curb envy? First, stop comparing yourself to others. Second, find your circle of competence and fill it on your own. Create a niche where you are the best. It doesn't matter how small your area of mastery is. The main thing is that you are the king or the queen of the castle. Like all emotions, envy has its origins in our evolutionary past. If the hominoid from the cave next door took a bigger share of the mammoth, it meant less for the loser. Envy motivated us to do something about it. We are the offsprings of the envious, but in today's world, envy is no longer vital. If my neighbor buys himself a Porsche, it doesn't mean that he has taken anything from me. Number 11. Inability to close doors. CEOs who examine every possible expansion often choose none in the end. Companies that aim to address all customer segments end up addressing no one. Salespeople who choose every single lead close no deals. The inability to close door is a metaphor for an inability to let go of the past or move on from certain experiences or relationships. This may manifest as a difficulty in ending relationships, leaving a job or a career path, or moving to a new location. We are obsessed with having as many irons as possible in the fire, ruling nothing out and being open to everything. However, this can easily destroy success. We must learn to close doors. A business strategy is primarily a statement on what not to engage in. Adopt a life strategy similar to a corporate strategy. Write down what not to pursue in your life. In other words, make calculated decisions to disregard certain possibilities, and when an option shows up, test it against your not to pursue list. It will not only keep you from trouble but also save you lots of thinking time. Think hard once and then just consult your list instead of having to make up your mind whenever a new door cracks open. Most doors are not worth going through, even if the handle seems to turn so effortlessly. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like and comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel